So I'm going to greatly abbreviate my presentation. Please come by and see the poster that we will have at the poster session. So I'm supposed to speak 15 minutes. I'm probably going to speak 5 so that we make sure we stay on track with our other presentations. I think that the flu mapper is a very important one. Of course, ours is important too. I don't want to undermine ourselves, but I'm a little rattled anyway, so I don't mind not talking very long. Okay, so I'm talking about the Structured Participation Toolkit. We're the Participatory GIS Systems Technology Group. That's myself, Tim Nyergis, Robert over here in the far corner. You belong, don't shake your head. Enabling Participatory CyberGIS. So, of course, you know, being able to interact with your colleagues, using the gateway and communicate with each other is important. Using the wiki for cooperating, we do that. We may use a calendar to coordinate. And all of that does, you know, kind of fit this concept of collaboration, the 4 C's. Piotr Jankowski is on the remote meeting with us, and he and Nair just wrote about the 4 C's in much more detail and how they can be supported by IT systems in a 2001 paper. Also referenced on the poster, so please come by. So we're really interested in the 4 C's for knowledge production. And we think that structured analytic deliberation is very important. So not just kind of loose talk back and forth, figure things out, but kind of how do you move through a process, especially asynchronously with a large group of people to reach a decision, right? It's easy one-on-one or even in a small group, but how do you do that with hundreds of people? So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. That's actually important, but there are 2 precedents for what we are integrating, and I want to show these also so you have a sense of how much functionality we are working to get into the gateway, because the demo right now is a very limited amount of information or functionality. A lot of that is just getting the technology right, and now we're moving into the content. But one of the precedents for the Structured Participation Toolkit is the web application called Let's Improve Transportation. People could map their travel, and then they discussed kind of the travel and travel packages, because this was for a big transportation improvement project. They could discuss it all, and I shouldn't really walk away from the microphone, within this agenda. And this is generated by a workflow engine. These are what we refer to as structured participation methods. So people can brainstorm, then they can review and summarize and give feedback. Then they move from their kind of big brainstorm of all these concepts and ideas to factors. So you get from this to keywords, and then those become your transportation factors. And then as a group through this process, they can weigh how important they are and finally come up with a transportation package. So again, that's all kind of bundled into a lot of information, but I want you to have a sense of this whole process. Initially, we adapted our other precedent, voicing climate concerns, to the CyberGIS Collaboratory. This was linked through an iframe, so a new window would open up. You're in the gateway, you click on a link, you open up a new browser window, and you're in the gateway feedback space. And you could pick your component, and then you can write some information and do your keywords, and eventually those would either be metrics for user feedback, or we can eventually discuss more things like complex models and develop indicators. But the basic idea, type some information, identify keywords, get comments on those, and vote to move forward. So this is a process that I would, I'm sorry I'm truncating so much. But we've taken these 2 applications and all of this functionality to support this analytic deliberative process, okay, structured discussion, and moving through several steps to reach decisions. We've taken that now, and also using XJS, which you saw with the ASU group, we've integrated into the gateway. And I'm going to actually switch to the demo, but I just want to say that we're using XJS and something called JSON-P. That allows us to do cross-domain communication. So from the gateway, they call the PGIST server. The PGIST server processes the information that's being input, sends back the keywords, saves the comments, and eventually would support the rest of the process, right? So the front end, the GUI, is in the gateway. The back end is on our servers here at University of Washington. And we're doing the processing, we're doing the persistence. So none of that has to live in Illinois. It can live here. because it's so much, rainier here. It likes it better. Okay, actually, I am gonna switch to the demo, but I'll go ahead and do this. We have a pretty simple process. Development on our side, we're the purple. Development, deploy, and then we update that. We check that into our code repository, our shared code repository. Then on the other side, Jan, for example, takes it out, tests it. And then we talk about it, and then he can update the repository, and then I can kind of, integrate those changes into my development code base. So pretty simple development cycle, obviously facilitated by a shared repository. One of the issues we've come to realize that we have is that we have different versions of XJS. Initially, they had talked about moving to 4.2. I went to 4.2. They didn't because of map panels. We never kind of synced up on that. So when we got to integrating, we're like, oh, okay. So some functionality I need isn't in your older version. And it's a simple solution is a master list of technologies being used in development and in production. That's something that everyone is kind of always apprised of. And in terms of the content, and I will show you the content, that's the other issue that we're working on is just how to integrate more information. And I think Luke mentioned this with the screen real estate. We're going from a full web application to a small panel. So I will go ahead and do that, and I hope I'm still logged in. That's kind of another thing in our demos. We time out really quickly in the gateway. They don't give you a lot of time to be lazy. If you're not active, you're out of there. But it's kind of hard for demos. So right.
Refresh the page to see if you're actually
kicked out. Yeah, I know. We'll see if I'm kicked out or not. So and I feel like you've had kind of a sporadic introduction to the gateway interface, and I think the next presentation will give you a better idea of what that looks like. You've seen Luke's work. This is in the application viewshed. I feel bad. I'm sorry, Piotr. So it would be here under viewshed. I'm already in the viewshed application. I could load some analysis, and I could share that, and I can also give the developers of viewshed my immediate feedback. So this is very similar. And this should have been initialized, so we're having a few problems here. This should have been initialized with viewshed feedback, so I'm wondering if we did, maybe something's lost. We'll see what happens. So test meeting. And then this goes to our server, and these keywords, so this is a call to our server. Those keywords were generated by our server. Obviously we expect people to type a lot more, and then, the keywords are parsed. We have a language processor. And then I submit this. Another thing I did notice in testing this yesterday is that the automatic refresh is not happening. So there's been something kind of lost in our functionality. It didn't take it at all. Yeah, that happened last time. It probably did. We log out really quickly. Okay, I'm not going to take the time to do that. It does work. It's in development phase. So you can type in your information, you can generate your keywords, and then you should be able to click on view feedback, and you can see not only your own, but you can see others. It's sorted by keywords. And what we need to add to this is the ability for you to comment back on something that someone said, and this voting process. So who agrees, who disagrees, and that becomes very important with the keyword generation. It's less, I don't think it's less important at the brainstorming phase, but especially as you try to move through the process, the voting, which is the same functionality but just applied in different ways, becomes very important because it's a consensus-driven process, which I think is very important to keep in mind. A large group of people moving through a discussion in a consensus-driven process where they can vote to move forward, they can vote on the content, and that functionality we are still in the process of adding. So I apologize if that was really fast and brief. I will take questions this evening at the PGIST poster, and I can talk way more about structured participation methods there as well. Okay, so that's it for the demo. Quick. I'm going to switch over to Anand now.
Yeah. Is there a burning question for Mary?
No, but there's a burning comment from Mary.
Uh-oh. Tim.
So go ahead. The idea that Luke had mentioned with Manoir, they stacked 4 integration strategies and challenges in the slide that they had. On the top was collaborative analysis. Collaborative analysis, in a sense, was share your information with someone else. So essentially, the opportunities that we have going forward here is looking at what we're doing in the user interface, and then use some structured participation technologies in line with what it is shared with someone else, and see what we come up with at this point in time.
This one, this